This is your instructor, Professor Dr. Beerendra Pandey, once again. Today we are now going to complete our second series of lecture on the topic Customary Morality Cannot Be Guide to Modern Life. In the previous lecture, we had covered right from approaching the topic to its writing process. Now we move on to the drafting of the essay. The first paragraph of the essay. In the first paragraph of the argument synthesis essay, we basically do three things. We begin by clarifying the topic, then we introduce the issue. As we clarify the topic, we introduce the issue which is controversial in nature, and as we introduce the issue, we ensure that the polemic is very nicely set up. The controversy is very nicely set up. The opposite view also very powerfully emerges. Then we state our standpoint, and that standpoint becomes a thesis. As I told you in the last lecture, the standpoint can be in favor of the topic, against the topic, or it can be in between. So let's see, how I have done the first paragraph. Well, the first paragraph, see, customary morality means the ethical life of a real society whose righteousness is nothing but custom, the moral norms and values locatable in the institutions and traditions of a living community. A society operating on a certain customary morality is a local world where the ideas of right and wrong are rooted within an historical experience of specific traditions and customs. As such, customary morality is not universally valid. Customary morality embedded in usages, codes, and social institutions leads to an outgrowth of conscientiousness. While it is a step forward in one sense, it is also true that it cannot breed, it is also true that it can breed orthodox habits. The orthodoxy surrounding customary morality derives from its foundation on age, sanctity, and inscrutability of custom. Each morality provides an account of what individuals ought to do, but none of them provides a good reason for individuals to take them seriously. Considering the conceptions of human agency and reason that prevail in Western modern life, a rational individual rejects what he or she sees as the conservative claims of morality. So, and this portion I have numbered as 1. See here, this portion I have numbered as 1, and this is nothing but the clarification of the statement, the clarification of the topic. Basically, it talks about what is customary morality and how it cannot be guide to moral life, which is what the statement seems to be saying. Now, what I am going to do is, in the, here as you see 2, from here on, I'm going to give you the polemical view, which is the second thing that you must be doing. I am polemicizing this topic from two. The ascendancy of modernity in the West comes as a striking contrast to the domination of conventional morality in Muslim Arabia. India, however, inhabits a unique space. While modernity, to quote the word of Nietzsche, does not stupefy the Indians, they still stick to what they perceive as the right modes. So this portion number 2, here I have polemicized it. In what way I polemicize it? What I say is that the way West has adopted morality at the cost of morality, and the way Saudi Arabia still stickles to morality, traditional morality, Muslim Arabian nations, and the way India inhabits the hybrid space. These examples implicitly polemicize the topic. And based on that, then I state the thesis of my essay. This thesis of my essay, here is the thesis, and the thesis is, while this essay recognizes the clear-cut antinomy between morality and modernity, the final point that it makes is that the former means morality, can still be a guide to the latter. So, I clarify the topic, I implicitly polemicize it, and then based on the polemic, I take I treat the middle path. What I am saying is that morality, as the statement says, cannot be guide to modernity, but as the case of India shows, it can still be guide to morality. So it's a kind of in-between position that I have taken, and this is what I am going to prove through the through 3 body paragraphs. So let's go to body paragraph number 1, which will be the second paragraph of the essay. But before we go to the body paragraphs, let's know what we are supposed to do in body paragraphs. What is the template of the body paragraph? In body paragraph, we are supposed to use logic, and in my previous lecture I talked about 2 forms of logic, the deductive form of logic and the inductive form of logic. So you use rather any of the 2 or both, doesn't matter, any one you can use, both you can use, it's up to you. If you are using inductive logic, that means that you are offering evidence to support your thesis. You begin by giving evidences to support your thesis or to support your claim. And when you are using deductive logic, you basically fall back upon syllogisms to support the claim. Syllogism is a tripartite, has a tripartite structure, as I talked in my previous lecture. And important thing is, apart from the logic, what is important is that you introduce one paragraph which is a counter argument. Whatever view you have taken, you take a view opposite to that, and be sympathetic to it, consider it, and then finally dismiss it. So that is what is called a paragraph that contains counter argument. That is very important. So this is our body paragraph number 1 of this essay. Let's see, what are the things I have placed here, what ideas I have, what arguments are here. One of the most palpable antinomies between customary morality and modernity, and I have deliberately used this word because this word harks back, goes back to the last sentence of the previous paragraph and establishes a smooth connection between the two. It leads to a very smooth transition. So one of the most palpable antinomies between customary morality and modernity is the big gap that exists between passion and rationality. Social institutions, which are in fact basins of customary morality, foster in us the belief that a passion, which is naturally a transient phenomenon, can have a substantial duration. For example, the institution of marriage. Love is a passion, but the social institution of marriage strengthens the belief that lifelong love is possible. So, a very common example, I have taken is the example of, man-woman love. Love, what I am saying is love is a very transient thing, is a passionate, transient thing. Yet, and what is marriage? We think that marriage, which is the culmination of love, marriage only institutionalizes love, which is passionate and which is very transient. And by going in for marriage in a matrimonial relationship, we think that we are going to have our relationship over a very long period of time. The way as things go in India, people believe that husbands and wives in India are separated only by death, and this is not the case in the USA. I lived in the USA for 7 years when I was studying there. I have done MA and then again Masters in Cultural Studies, MA in English, Masters in Cultural Studies, and also PhD in English from there, and lived there for 7 years. And what I saw there was that one person there, one individual there marries at least 5 times. And don't talk of love. How many love relationships they have? Sometimes it becomes, uncountable kind, it goes to the uncountable kind of proportion. And they will at least, average Americans marry at least 5 times during their lifetime. At least 5 times. I remember when I had invited my head of the department for dinner at my home, he came with his wife, and she asked my wife, you have been married for how many years? And my wife said 17. When we had invited, I was married for 17 years, and she said, oh my God, living with the same man for 17 years? It was a shock to her. How can a couple live with each other for 17 years? Because average relationship, matrimonial relationship, does not last there for more than 5 years. But in India, people still think that matrimonial alliances can only be, the couple can only be separated by death. So this is the example I have brought over here. But the social institution of marriage strengthens the belief that lifelong love is possible. Despite this rational truth, what is the rational truth? Rationally, if you look at it, if love is a transient thing, short-lived thing, how can it be a lifelong affair? Because our rationality says that it cannot be. So despite this rational truth, most educated urban Indians even today frown upon living relationships and divorces. Most of them fear that living relationships and divorces may invite the wrath, the anger of the society. Thus, the transgression of customary morality, which remains embedded in the obedient behavior of the cultural community, turns out to be an offense that results in negative consequences for the community. The tension between customary morality, for example, customary morality and modern knowledge definitely comes to the fore wherever rational empirical knowledge, for example, space science, has consistently worked through to the disenchantment of the sun as God and its transformation into a causal mechanism. Every increase of rationalism in empirical science increasingly pushes traditional morality from the rational into the irrational realm. In other words, as modernity progresses, scientific rationalism replaces customary mores. The core element of the modernity thesis is that progress can be equated to increasing secularization and rationality on the one hand, and a matching in compliance to customary morality on the other hand. Right, I give another example of the sun. The advancement in space science tells us that the sun is one of the planets. Okay, and in sharp contrast to that view, we take it as sun as God. In India, we take sun as God. We Hindus take sun as the God. Now, moving over to body paragraph number 2, that is the third paragraph of the essay. See here how I am making the connection, the transition, how the transition is being made. That is through the use of this word, however. However, for a society that values its historical sense, disobedience to customary morality remains out of question. So, the last sentence of the previous paragraph was emphatically telling us that if we want to be called modern, then we must be disobedient to morality. We must not comply with morality. But this paragraph disagrees and says that, however, for a society that values its historical sense, disobedience to customary morality remains out of question. Given the predominance of the living sense community prevailing in such societies, it follows that individuality, freedom, and change are resisted as categorically evil and a corruption of the community. For example, in Saudi Arabia, even in the 21st century, century is missing over here, 21st century, giving public role and visibility to women is taken as encouraging moral lapses. If Saudi Arabia's inflexibility to a modern outlook is an extreme example of customary conservatism, the immersion in the materiality of the postmodern West, leading to the commercial and pornographic exploitation of the woman's body, is of another extreme. So what I am saying is that Saudi Arabia's attitude to women and the West's attitude to women, they are at extreme points. In both these extreme points, women are exploited. In Saudi Arabia, women are exploited because they are not allowed to be exposed to modernization and modernity, modern way of life. In the West, the West has become so much, the West actually makes a commercial use of the woman's body. They have given women freedom, given enough exposure, women enough exposure to modernity, but they basically exploit their body. That you can see from the way their body is utilized in a very titillating way for selling goods, advertisement, and the use of their body for pornography. India in this sense, so India is a contrast. India in this sense inhabits a unique hybrid space. There is no doubt that India no longer stickles upon its traditional notions of asceticism, self-renunciation and acceptable behavior in relations with others. The influence may have waned, but it still survives in the form of the mutation of self-asceticism and self-renunciation into self-discovery and self-realization. Although the contemporary Indians have taken to self-stylization, they certainly have not neglected any sustained consideration of relationships of responsibility to and for others as the so-called liberal West has done. Compliance to customary morality still persists in India even as it has adapted to modernity. I am actually here drawing upon the concept of hybridity by Homi Bhabha. What Homi Bhabha says is that when the Britishers, they brought modernity to India, Indians were keen to adapt to that without giving up what they thought were the right things about their customary ways of life or their customary morality. Homi Bhabha calls that hybridity and also the third space. So from where this example, I have taken. Traditionally what we have been told is, we have been told to go for self-asceticism, renunciation kind of things. Now contemporary Indians no longer follow these things. But that they no longer follow these things in their purity doesn't mean that they have already decided not to respect the idea behind these notions of renunciation and self-asceticism. These traditional moralities have, in contemporary India mutated into this self-discovery and self-realization, as a result of which, even though Indians in contemporary times take to self-stylization, they are not as individualistic as the citizens in the West. Okay? They show much greater sense of responsibility to the other than the people in the West do. And if you read Derrida's two books, his book Rogue, in which he makes a deconstruction of democracy, and his other book on cosmopolitanism and hospitality, on cosmopolitanism, cosmopolitanism. If in the first book he deconstructs democracy, what he says is that democracy is yet to come to the West. And in the second book he says that hospitality, the West claims that, it is very hospitable, but actually he says that hospitality is yet to come to the West. So it's a kind of, my understanding of those two books, from where I have synthesized the ideas to formulate my own argument over here. And then the last sentence of this paragraph tells you compliance to customary morality still persists in India even as it has adapted to modernity. Then we go to the third body paragraph, which is the fourth paragraph of the essay, and herein I bring the much needed counter argument and resolve it. So let's see. What also becomes obvious from the tensive relationship between customary morality and modern life, as the preceding paragraph shows, is the naive belief that the former offers a form of escape from its antinomies with modernity. Here again you see this tensive relationship, that phrase I have used here, it refers back to the last sentence of the previous paragraph and makes a very smooth link. So that is for transition. Let me begin again. What also becomes obvious from the tensive relationship between customary morality and modern life, as the preceding paragraph shows, is the naive belief that the former offers a form of escape from its antinomies with modernity. It is in the nature of the human condition to be tempted to the allures of change. In facing the allures of tantalizing change, there is the prospect, the hope of victory gained. The seedbed of character lies in what emerges from testing, and from this there is no escape. Self-knowledge generates its own moral reflexivity, where choice has to be made in what to struggle over. In this moral wrestling, the self comes to know what it despises, and this forms the platform for seeing something better. Morality needs modernity to know what it wants to reject, and the latter needs the former to realize its pleasures. Living with each other has uses for both the good and the bad. Thus, modernity needs its foil for its manifestation. If the antinomies of the bad and the good are cast asunder, then something of the human condition gets lost. Based on this logic, it can be argued that morality and modernity are indivisible, and that the former is indeed a guide to the latter. That is, morality is still a guide to modernity. So there it ends. Now, what is the argument over here? I give you a very simple example. The antinomy between Ram and Ravan, Krishna and Kans, the antinomy that exists between the evil and the good. If the evil doesn't exist, the righteous will have no value. If the righteous does not, for the righteous to have value and currency, it is important that the evil exists. So it's the same kind of relationship that exists between morality and modernity. And in that sense, morality can still be a guide to modernity in the modern times. So in this way, with the help of these body paragraphs, I have dramatized the implications of the topic, showed the both sides of the argument, and at the same time sufficiently proved my standpoint. Now I move to the conclusion. Despite the relevance of the morality to modern life, now you see this word relevance, this relevance and this despite. What these two do is again link the concluding paragraph with the previous paragraph. See how I maintain the link. How I am able to achieve the link, the very smooth linking. This is how you should practice. Despite the relevance of the morality to modern life, it largely seems that modernity kills the very thing it loves. So previous paragraph, we made the point that modernity, to be significant, it needs morality. Now the point I am making is that by so doing, actually modernity at the same time kills morality, the very thing that it loves. And this claim does not seem to be without basis given the growing popularity of the traditionally forbidden transgressive pleasures, which I hinted in the body paragraph in the form of the exploitation of the woman's body. Transgressive pleasures which have become industrialized, as in the case of is missing here, as in the case of gambling, lotteries, dildos, male and sexual, artificial male and sexual organs, routine affairs no longer unrespectable in the postmodern West, but disquieting in a country like India. The way post-independent India has adapted to modernism and is cozying up to postmodernism, it is crystal clear that Indian postmodernity uses customary morality as a guide-like foil of playing vice against virtue, and the upshot is an avoidance of a condition of living on a field of chaff where nothing roots, something akin to T.S. Eliot's wasteland. See, I am a professor of literature, so I am utilizing my reading experience to make a very forceful statement right at the point where this essay is being concluded. So, if what I am saying here is that if morality cannot be a foil for modernity, when it becomes a foil, then what happens? It opposes each other. It needs each other. Just as there can be no Ram without Ravan and no Ravan without Ram, in the same way, a foil-like relationship is just this kind of Ram-Ravan-like of relationship. So, modernity completely devoid of morality will lead to a condition of life which T.S. Eliot foresees and portrays in his poem The Wasteland. Life without morality is wasteland where nothing grows. Okay, a very rootless kind of life, meaningless kind of life. So this is how I have done this essay. So I have finished the essay, and my first two lectures were about a proverbial essay. This one is about argumentative essay, and our next lecture will be the third kind of essay, explanatory synthesis. In your UPSC examination, if you look at the questions covers three genres of essay writing. One is expansion or amplification, a proverb or proverb-like a statement, the first two lectures. Second one is argumentative or the argument synthesis, the third and the fourth lecture. And next two lectures will be about information, how you synthesize information that is available, and how based on that information you can write explanatory synthesis essay. And the topic that I will be dealing is today's globalized world requires more connective highways and railways than national boundaries. Okay, so see you in the next class. Thank you.